welcome to the Juvenile Justice Oversight Council meeting for August. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes, which I believe were distributed.
Motion.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
While you review the minutes. Are we recording? Are we? Thank you. I appreciate that. Go ahead and call the roll, since that needs to happen first.
Mr. Adams, Miss Gardner, Mr. Gold,
Here.
Miss Walker, Mr. Ward,
Here.
Miss Comstock,
Here.
Miss Dennis,
Here.
Dr. Glass,
Christina Weeder for Dr. Glass.
Mr. Harvey,
Here.
Dr. Marks,
Tina Robbins for Dr. Marks.
Mr. Preston,
Laura Karam for Damon Preston.
Miss Reed, Senator Carroll, Senator Webb, Representative Bratcher,
Here.
Representative Herron, Co-Chair Westerfield,
Here.
Co-Chair Elliott.
All right, seeing that we have a quorum, I believe we do. Now, I'll entertain that motion to approve the minutes. Motion made. Is there a second? Second, thank you. Any questions, errors, corrections, or anything in the minutes that we need? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please vote by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Minutes are approved. Okay. We do have, as always, agency updates on the agenda. I want to point you all to AOC's report in there, and then members should have now some staffing information from the Department of Juvenile Justice, which was distributed, I think, just moments ago. I know you didn't have the benefit of seeing that in advance, but I'd ask you to take that with you and take a look at that. Commissioner, thank you all for preparing some numbers for us to distribute there. Do you have anything you want to add to the written report or written documentation you all have submitted? Okay. Any? Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments on anything that's been distributed here, or on AOC's report, or anybody else? No? Okay. Commissioner, is the work that the agency's doing, the department's doing to recruit staff, everything progressing the way you want it to?
We're making a lot of progress. There's still areas that we're really
Sure.
behind in. So, but overall, things are much better. Campbell area, the northern Kentucky, continues to be the biggest challenge.
And you all, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a pay bump based on the geography or the location, right? Or a locality, some sort of pay bump? The Secretary's shaking his head no.
There,
Right. Okay. I got you.
premium for detention centers went away.
Yeah, pull the mic up. Thank you.
Sorry. After the,
Is your light on?
I thought it was.
There we go.
So
There we go. Start at the top.
I'll start at the top. I think in last October, with some internal resources, we created a locality premium that did not apply evenly across the detention facilities. But when the governor announced the $50,000 roughly starting pay, the legislature supported that with new money. That differential went away, and I think at the detention facilities now, all of the starting pay is the same. Is that your understanding? So,
Thank you. Senator, go ahead.
That being the case, how are we going to solve the problem up in that area? Are we going to have to
look at a differential pay again. I mean, that has to be fixed.
Well, I'm dumb enough to wade into this, I guess. I mean, I think that's something, everything has to be on the table, Senator, because you're right. We have to solve these problems, but I will just remind, I mean, when we had the differential, there were members of the General Assembly that were made it clear to me that they did not think that was the best idea. So it's sort of like trying to thread the needle, I suppose. But the truth is,
I can't imagine you can't find something that satisfies all 103.
yeah, you know, that's one of my many failures. The truth is that every labor market is different. You know, I mean, even Paducah and Bowling Green are different down in our part of the state. So I think we've got to have a serious look at what will staff Campbell and really also Jefferson, because we know that we'll have coming online as soon as the design and construction is finished, the redesigned downtown facility in Jefferson that will require way yonder more staff than we have in Jefferson now. So, and the urban areas are just, the labor markets are different. So that's going to have to require a lot of study, and I hope collaboration between our branch and the General Assembly.
So it's not always about pay. Sometimes it's environment. Sometimes it's leadership. Are you all certain in Campbell that that is the issue?
You know, Senator, I think money is always a major component. It's not the only component. But I think money is the biggest component. I think if you can attract the staff with the right staff with money, of course you've got to have good working conditions and good leadership, and we've had some struggles in that area as well. But if the money to me is the baseline factor, if we're just not competitive with the market for labor in wherever the location is, you just never get a chance, you know. And the other thing that happens, I don't want to go on too long, Chairman. You can stop me.
You're fine.
So I've lived with this a little while. The other thing that happens is when you're kind of not in the market on compensation, sometimes you can hire staff, but you can't keep them. And it is in this business, an inexperienced staff is treacherous in a lot of ways. You're on thin ice when nobody in the facility has experience.
Anything else, Senator?
Just one other question. This is an off the wall question, and I don't remember where I read this. And for me, this is kind of not really in keeping what my general philosophy is. But I read where there are juvenile facilities that are using using staff that have been through the system before but straightened their life up and have been successful, and using them in facilities like this and acting, you know, as youth workers or guards, but also serve as mentors because they've been through the system. And I know that would require loosening up some basic requirements to fill those positions. And again, that's against my overall philosophy, but I could see some merit to that in filling some of those positions and really having staff that could make a difference in some of these kids' lives.
I was just going to say, actually, for some of those youth, it's not a matter of any background changes because it's sealed at 18. So if they weren't tried as a youthful offender, then when we do a background check, the juvenile stuff is not going to show up. And I will say we do have some staff that we have. One of the interesting is not just in the facility, but also in the community. And we've had one in which the supervisor of that community office and one of the workers, she used to be his probation officer. So, and now he works with her. So we do have some instances. You know, it's kind of like when I work for child welfare. A lot of times, if you ask kids who grew up in foster care what they want to be, about 98% of them, she's laughing, will say, "I want to be a social worker." It's what they know. And so we do get some interest in that. And some of them are excellent employees because they can tell the kids they have been there and share those experiences.
Thank you, Senator. One last question, Commissioner, before we move on to the alternatives to detention. Just on staffing, and your HR folks told us last month that you're doing a shotgun approach. That's my word, but you all were doing a lot of different things to try to bring in staff. Are there anything, fairs, ads, efforts that you could say that's happening in the next 30 to 60 days? For hiring purposes, I mean.
Well, that's just continual. I mean, now, for so many years, including my first stint with DJJ, and then I was gone and came back, we never had a recruiter. We had our first full-time recruiter just in the last year. And so that person works full-time on that, and she's done, I think, a really good job. And we
that
have
the lady
another
that was
person
here
in
last
justice. Do what?
Is that the lady who was here last month, or is she not?
Ritter?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
Felicia Jewett. Well, actually,
Okay.
she's with Justice, and then Felicia Jewett was with
Okay.
with us. So they do work hand in hand. So it's ongoing. I don't know how many of you all follow our Facebook and social media.
I can't say that I do.
Okay, well, it's on there all the time.
Okay.
We have one right now for, be a culinary instructor at Moorhead because we need that for Evoke Rehab, be a correctional officer, psychologist, nurse, fairs, ads. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. We haven't stopped. And we do target more so the special areas. As we've developed, like right now in Boyd and some other areas like that, we had I think something like 64 people on the register. So those areas are no longer as needed, and now
Sure.
we're able to focus more targeted in the areas that are and spend our money on radio ads. And we have one place where next door to us that put up a bigger banner than ours, so we made a bigger banner and put it up next to theirs. So we're
right.
working at it constantly.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chairman Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm not sure who would want to address this question, but I noticed 190 vacancies. Are those concentrated in one or two of these facilities, widespread? The data doesn't show us where the vacancies are in each of these places. So, is one more critical than the other, or is it just a widespread issue?
I think there are vacancies everywhere, but I would say, and just to make sure the data is properly interpreted, I believe that's a little bit artificially high because, and again, we so appreciated this help from the General Assembly. In the last session, you all created, I don't know, roughly 140 new correctional officer positions and funded those starting July 1st. So we were only able to start hiring those positions on July 1st. So those new positions, I'm sure, account for a lot of the vacancies. So it's not quite as dire, I suppose, as it appears. But we do have vacancies everywhere. But again, I think that our biggest challenge is going to be in the urban areas, which tends to be northern Kentucky and Jefferson County.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, we've got Margot Fig here with the director of the Division of Classification and Placement with DJJ. Welcome, Ms. Fig. Good morning, Director Fig. Talking about alternatives to detention. Tell us everything we don't know, which is everything.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try to tell you as much as I can today. I want to start with the history of the alternatives to detention so that you all can see how long we've been doing this. In 1996, when House Bill 117 was created or approved and DJJ was created, they also implemented alternative to detention programs in each of the catchment areas as they were coming online. Soon after that, we started hiring the detention alternative coordinators, which are the DACs. Those are the workers for the alternatives. Even in the communities, when we knew that detention centers were coming online, to go ahead and start the alternatives sooner. So I started in 2000, and at that time, I think we only had about 5 detention alternative workers because we were still building in the detention centers. Now, when we're fully staffed, we have 17 detention alternative coordinators. They're in every catchment area, which means we cover all 120 counties. There are some DACs that cover up to 17 counties. So it gets really fun and creative to figure out how they're going to do all of that, which we cover every county. Every county is offered the same programs. And we will have 3 supervisors and 17 DACs when fully staffed. The judges have always been really receptive to this program. They see it as a win-win for the courts because the court knows that the youth is going to be supervised and they're not necessarily going to be supervised in detention. Thank you. In fact, I was in a meeting with one of the judges. They're still asking, you know, do you all have more programs coming online? We really like to use this program. I was in a meeting with a judge 2 days ago, and she was raving about her particular worker in her area and the fact that she's always able to get access to the alternatives when she needs them. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and go over the PowerPoint if I can get this to work. The alternatives to detention, we call them ATD for short, so it's not such a mouthful. They are short-term, preferably no more than 30 to 45 days. Am I not doing it right? Thank you. Do you want to sit here? Yeah, that'd be good. I'm not super great at multitasking with electronics. I apologize. Is it up now? I know. I apologize. The alternatives are short-term, less restrictive programs than detention. We try to keep the kids no longer than 30 to 45 days. However, it is up to the judge, and if their cases are disposed in court, these placements are generally pre-adjudicative placements, and we do have some in the home. We have alternatives.
If I can ask, and members, if you have questions, please get those up to Chairman Elliott or myself or Matt. Are they? You said they're typically pre-adjudication?
Yes, sir. Which means that they're in front of the judge, pretrial arraignment, those things, and then we work with them until their cases are disposed.
Okay. Are they? Okay.
We do have some that are committed to DCBS or DJJ that are in our out-of-home placements.
Gotcha.
But generally, they're pre-adjudicated.
Thank you.
Home incarceration is the most popular alternative to detention. That allows the youth to stay in the community, either with their parent or another guardian. They're on an electronic ankle bracelet, and it is GPS. So they know in real time where the kids are and what's going on with that. The home supervision program is also a form of home incarceration, but that is without the equipment. So they don't have a monitor, they have a curfew. The parents have to know where they are at all times. And with both of those, we have case managers that we contract with through the Methodist Home and through NECO and Associates. And those case managers go to the home and do home visits at least once weekly. If the youth is having problems, they go more than once. And they make daily phone calls to the youth and the family to see if there's any issues, any problems, or if they need any help getting resources. We have 3 of our own placements out of home. We use DJJ, Frankfurt Group Home, Moorhead Alternative Program, and the one that's not on here is Frenchburg Group Home. It's a new group home that came online to do specific alternatives to detention. And when they go to those programs, they get the same services that they would in a normal group home, but they're out of the home. The courts really like these options. 2 of them, the Frankfurt Group Home and Frenchburg, their youth go to the alternative schools in the county. And then Moorhead Alternative Program, they have 2 sides. They have the YDC side, Youth Development Center side, and then they have the alternative side. And all 3 of those hold 8 youth at a time. So
what's the reason for the limit of 8? Is that a space or a funding or some other?
That's how many they can fit in their space, yes.
Okay.
Yes. We also use foster care. We do contract with Safi and with Necco and Associates. And the foster homes, the youth goes to the home. They have a case manager through that foster care agency that meets with the youth weekly and works with the home. Those youth are enrolled in the county schools where they reside.
Can you tell me what Safi is? If I said it right.
I honestly don't know what it stands for. What it stands for. It's a foster care agency, but I can get that information for you.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with them at all.
Yeah, they're we have a lot of homes with them out in Western Kentucky, but they're all over the
Really?
state. Yes,
Okay.
yes, but I can get the information
Thank you. Please do.
of what it stands for. If it stands for anything, it may not.
Yeah, the spelling at least would be nice because I'm not
Yes.
sure how to say what we're saying.
Yeah. But those foster parents integrate the youth into their home. They go to school there. They go with the foster parents. They have the case manager that goes in once a week. Private child care facilities, we use Gateway. Sometimes we use Otter Creek for the girls. And when the child goes to those private child care facilities, they just do the same program that all the kids are doing. So they just integrate the youth into every program. We have several community programs that are coming online this year. We have mentoring programs through several different agencies, and we have evening reporting centers. And the evening reporting centers are where the youth go from a certain time of day, from say 3 to 7 or 4 to 7, and they receive psychoeducational programs. They get help with tutoring. They do all kinds of different, depending on the center, they do different programs with the youth. And those are the hours when youth are more likely to be home alone and committing offenses. So they provide transportation, they provide meals. If there's other resources that they need, then they help the youth get those. And then the in-home wraparound programs are in-home therapy programs. We are currently working on contracts with a couple of different agencies, but if there is an in-home therapy program in the community that accepts the child's insurance or medical card, then we can refer them and hook them up with those resources also. The goals of the alternative program, these are federal definitions, but the goals are to divert the youth from secure detention who can safely remain in the community in order to serve them more appropriately and assure that detention beds are for the offenders who present the public safety issues, and then we have alternatives for those who need a less restrictive environment. It keeps the youth in the community safe. We're constantly monitoring the youth to make sure that they are following the rules of the program, making sure that if they're not supposed to leave home, they don't leave home, and if they do leave home, it's reported immediately. Ensure that the youth does not get new charges while pending court appearances. That's very important. We want these youth to be successful, so we help them and provide whatever they need that we can provide while they're in our care. And to ensure that the youth returns to the next court appearance, because sometimes they may not have a way, sometimes they forget when their court is, they're confused, they don't know how to navigate the system. And so our detention alternative coordinators, I'm going to call them DACs for short because that's a mouthful, they're continually monitoring the youth and working with them. If the youth doesn't have a way to court, then they work to try to help them find a way. They're amazing. The services that can be provided for the youth in the home are very good. So the detention alternative coordinator is a DJJ employee who's assigned to a certain catchment area. It gets a little confusing because the actual detention counties are not necessarily the DACS counties. They work in that geographical area and provide services to all 120 counties. They use any array of programs. If the child is at home on home incarceration, but they need a different program to go along with that, if they need to go to the evening reporting center, then we make a referral to that. If they need therapy, we make a referral to that. They help to monitor the population in detention centers, especially for status offenders, so that Kentucky stays in compliance with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention regulations. And
Let me
they,
just stop you and say that
Yes.
if you were thinking about texting me what SAFE is, I got it
okay.
from like 5 or 6 different people.
Okay.
Let me just say this universal thanks to everyone. I appreciate it. I'm all good.
Okay. And I apologize for not having that for you.
You're fine. I appreciate it. Sorry to interrupt you. Please
No,
continue.
you're fine. They also help to expedite cases by monitoring the length of stay of youth that are in detention. So one of the jobs of the DAC is to check the booking program daily. And then they look at kids when they've come in, when their detention hearings are. If a youth comes in and the judge says, well, your hearing's in 3 weeks, and then we may try to work with the courts and the attorneys to get that youth's hearing moved up. If it's a status offender, then we work to get those youth put in. If they're status offenders, can't be in detention for more than a certain amount of time, which it all gets confusing, but I'll try to go over that if you need me to. But they make sure that those youth are out and have their hearings when they're supposed to have their hearings. And if they need a different placement, sometimes a youth may be in and they say, well, the DAC might talk to them and see that they need a mental health assessment. So we work with the courts to get them a mental health assessment.
Is the DAC working with the fair teams?
Do we have many DACs on the fair teams?
Even
Yeah,
if they're not on it, are they working and communicating with them?
If any person that the child is involved with, then the DAC is in communication with them. So if they're in therapy, yes. If they're still doing a diversion, yes. But our kids have normally been into the courtroom. So if they're in front of the judge in the courtroom is when we come into play. So the CDWs, if they have kids that are also doing diversions, then yes, we communicate with them.
But does the even if the fair team process happened before previously, because now that the child's now in front of the court, whereas with the fair team they weren't, is the DAC looking at what the fair team or consulting with what the fair team's already tried or maybe tried and unsuccessfully tried with a kid?
Yes, we do. We do talk to the different entities that have already worked with the youth to see what they have done and what has been successful for them. So if that is an option, then and the DAC knows about it, then yes, the DAC will talk with them.
How would the DAC know about it?
Usually the parents tell us that they were there, or we may call the CDW and say, hey, does this kid have any other priors? Because the priors that we look at go back a year.
It seems to me that there needs to be a direct connection between the fair team and the DAC that doesn't depend on the kid and doesn't depend on the parent. Because one of my other questions is going to be whether or not the DAC is coordinating or talking with the parents, or if the parents, what kind of success the coordinator has with parents, because typically it's not great. Not in Kentucky. And I'm not just saying with the coordinator, I'm just saying in juvenile justice matters generally, we see a lot of issues where parents aren't involved. That's not the case in every case, obviously. It's the case, and it's often enough to be a problem and a concern, and not just in Kentucky. I certainly don't want I wouldn't want any part of state government relying solely on what a parent is telling you has happened or needs to happen or what have you.
Yeah, yes. And we don't rely solely on the parent, but the parent might say, hey, they were in with the CDW doing this, or they have another appointment, and then the DAC gets their prior history record. They have access to CourtNet, and they go in and pull the record. So if they need to talk to somebody about what was done or what happened, then yes, they do that.
Okay, thank you.
So there's 2 ways that the child can enter, that a youth can enter an alternative to detention. When the court designated worker is called out and the child is in custody with the police, then the CDW can call the detention alternative coordinator and say, this is the youth, these are the charges, are there any alternatives available? We do have some alternatives available at the front end. One of those is the YMCA Safe Place. They take youth from around the state. And then the foster care option is there. If they need a foster home, they can go to either of those options until their detention hearing. We also have home incarceration available around the state, and those workers are on call, and they hook up the equipment on the youth that night. So those are things for kids with lower offenses, habitual runaways. Maybe there's just something going on in the home and the youth doesn't need to be at home right now. Then those are options that we have for the court designated worker program, and we work with them, and then they call and make the actual referral because they're the one with the most information on the youth. And then when the youth goes to a detention hearing, then if the judge wants them to remain in that placement, then the child is just rolled over into that placement. The other option for that placement is the judge may say, well, we're going to send the kid there for 2 days to give mom respite and allow mom to pick them up. So in that case, we also offer that as a pre-detention process as we work with the CDWs. The other process is just simply the youth is in court in front of the judge and there may be a possibility this youth is going to have to go to secure detention. The DAC is there to speak up and say, Your Honor, if you want, we can talk to him and see if there's a placement we can offer him. The judges are pretty familiar with all the placements, so sometimes they'll just look at us and say, hey, can he go to Frenchburg? Or can you, put this kid in an evening reporting center for the next 2 weeks and get the services for that? The DAC is there to provide any of that they need. Once we complete the placement tool and talk to the youth and talk to the guardian or the parent, then the youth is approved for the placement. We notify the court and all interested parties. So if the youth has a social worker, then we let the social worker know. We let the youth's attorney know. If they're still doing diversion for another case, they let the CDW know. So everybody knows where the youth is, and then the DAC monitors that placement. We get weekly reports from the providers to let us know how the youth is doing, if there are problems that need to be addressed. And the DAC can either go to the kids' home and meet with them, have them in the office. They can go to the school and meet with them. If they're in an out-of-home placement, we can set up a virtual meeting, or they can go to the out-of-home placement and have a meeting with the staff and the youth. And then if there's any violations, if there's any AWOLs, or if the child does receive new charges that occurred after being in the placement, then we work with the court and see if the judge wants the youth returned to detention, or if we can just do sanctions with the youth, which is moving up and giving them consequences, basically.
We do have a question with Representative Bratcher.
Yes.
Just so I'm clear, the whole DAC that you've been talking about is pre-adjudication.
It's mostly pre-adjudication, yes, sir.
So some of these are like serving their sentence. I know that's not the right word, but like after. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yes, they are. Some of them are
I'm getting the head shake
pre-adjudication.
no.
I'm sorry?
No, your partner was giving me the head shake no. So. No, that's
There
okay. I need a lot of head shakes.
There are very few that are serving days. If they are serving days, they're usually in an out-of-home placement because the judge has ordered them to serve time in detention, and the DAC will say, hey, can we put this kid, say at Frankfurt Group Home or Gateway, and let them serve their days there. Most of them have not been adjudicated. That is the majority of the youth that we work with. There is an occasion where they'll be committed to the department, and instead they may already be in the placement, so we just let them remain in the placement until they're placed by DJJ classification.
And you said you have each one of them tracked. I mean, like right now you could find out where like Jane Doe is, right?
If they're on a GPS monitor, yes, sir. If they're out of home, they're with their facilities. But if they're on an HIP monitor, then we can access that through going through the case manager. I can't personally access it. The case manager working with the youth will access it.
And one question for just later, maybe you're going to address it. I don't know if this is the right forum for it, but can you talk about how much it costs, like per DAC or whatever, per DAC placement?
Per placement, yes, sir. For the home incarceration, is that okay? Okay. For the home incarceration programs, it's $50 a day, and DJJ pays that through our general dollars. For our facility placements, there is no charge because those are already DJJ facilities, so we're already paying the staff. For any other private child care or foster home placements, it ranges from $78 to $150 a day. And then currently, if it's a status offender, then the county gets billed for that, but only at a rate of $94.50 a day. So even if we're paying $150 a day, then they're only paying $94.50 a day.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And before we move on, what percentage of your admissions or your kids that are going through the ATD process end up being detained?
I do not have that actual number with me.
Can you get that for us?
I can make every attempt to get that, yes, sir. I do have a success rate, and we can see how many youth were unsuccessfully returned to detention, but I just don't have that information specific with me right now.
Okay. If you can get that and submit that to us after today, that'd be great.
Okay.
And Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back during our working group on DJJ, there was a judge from Jefferson County that testified, and she spoke about some of these types of programs, and she talked about the need to have more options to detention. In Jefferson County, is it just a matter of volume that there aren't enough programs like you've mentioned? Are they just not set up there? Or and Representative Bratcher, you may help me on this with Jefferson County, because I know that was a big deal for her when she testified, and something she was very adamant about. What is the issue in Jefferson County?
Well, I can tell you that we do have all of these options available to all the youth in Jefferson County. We are at the mercy of whether there's a bed available at the facility as to when we can place a youth. We do have referral lists. So if the child is referred to the program, then if the child, is still in detention when there's an opening, then we look to move those youth. For home incarceration, that program is available. There is no cutoff on that program. So there could be multiple youth in that. For the community programs, again, we're just at the mercy of if they have availability. The evening reporting centers, I believe, can hold up to 20 kids. So if those are available, then we use those. We make referrals to in-home therapy, which is also an alternative for the youth. And then as they have a space, then they work with the youth. But Jefferson County is very busy. And, it's just a matter of if there's an opening for the youth to go into.
If I could jump in, what Senator Carroll was discussing, the judge was, I believe, and Representative Herron could add to this too. Hate to hijack your committee here, Chairman, but it is important that she was saying that the facilities were so bad she didn't want to send them to the facilities, and that there just wasn't enough of your program, and she just felt like sending them home with their parents, even if their parents didn't want them to come back with them. It was really a mess, as I guess I could just say. And so, and I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying that that's some of the things we were dealing with,
Yes, sir. And I can't speak to what the exact problem is and why they're not getting in the alternatives. It could be, basically a space issue is the biggest problem of getting kids in. If they're full, then we have to wait till there's an opening. But I don't know. I can't speak to the other reasons in Jefferson County. Yeah. I just know that these programs are available.
Do you think they're doing a good job in Jefferson County? Your DAC operation?
Oh, our DACs?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, sir. They're doing an amazing job. We started when we took over in Louisville for the detention center. We had one detention alternative coordinator covering the whole county, and me. and then we're slowly building it up. As we hire people in, we have grown to we have 4, we've got 2 more that are being hired, and we're hiring a supervisor for that area. Yes, I feel they're doing a great job, but
Let me mention one thing on that. One of the things we always did before was we used primarily all private providers, out of home placement, children's homes and that sort of thing. And when COVID hit, a lot of them had issues too, and also have the same problems that we've had with staffing. And so a lot of that availability dried up as far as being able to place some of the kids in some of the out of home. So all of the ones that are now DJJ have come on in the last 2 years. And we converted some of our facilities over because we were not able to access those private providers like we did. And so, you know, we have a goodly number of beds compared to what we used to. I think everybody agrees it would be nice if we could have more. We're to the point now with our bed space, we really can't convert any others of our post-dispositional programs over to ATDs. But with if PCC's capacities, certainly we could look at that. And I would like another one in the West.
Man, those
because all the
acronyms
ones are
just
in
throw
the
me
East.
into left field. What was those 2 acronyms you just said?
Which ones were they?
PCC?
Oh, sorry. We're doing that. Private child care. That'd be like
okay.
Baptist Home for Children, Methodist Home, SAFI, which we can specialized alternatives for youth and families. And now that we know that's what that is, and then, you know, there's several all through the state. Maryhurst, and oh gosh, I'm trying to think of all that. You know, DCBS uses those. You know that an acronym, right? They use those as well. And that's part of it too. Is not, you know, the availability for our kids, because we kind of compete with them because they're looking for those beds as well. And I don't know what other acronym I use, but I probably threw
No, that's
another
fine.
one.
Anything else, Representative?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Anything else, Senator
Appreciate the leeway.
Representative Herron.
Thank you. And thank you all for this presentation so far. I do have a couple of requests, then question. Is there a way that we can get actually the list of organizations and placements that are used specifically for Jefferson County?
yes, ma'am.
From my experience of working on the ground and being in meetings, I think that folks have an idea that there's a lot of resources in Jefferson County, which there are. But when we talk about this population of young people, there's not as many as we think that they are. And so I think that if we are able to get a list and see like exactly where those kids are being able to be referred to, then it'll give everyone a better idea of what that process looks like. And then the other question I have is around funding. And I would like to know and understand better of how much money are we using statewide on alternatives to detention, and if we could get that broken down. I don't know if you want to do the top 5 counties where the largest population of our youth are coming from that make up the DJJ population. But I think we need to also have an understanding of how funding is being utilized for alternatives and other things, so we can have understanding if we need to be putting more money into those things, because I don't know that we know that, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Yes, it makes absolute sense. I will speak with our fiscal people and get the number, how much we've been spending on ATDs. It is an exorbitant amount, but I will get that number and send that when I send the number of kids returned for secure detention.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before you move on, I have one final question.
Yes,
since
sir.
Might as well throw it in here in this little break. Do you have a number, or did I already miss the total number of kids served on an annual basis, say?
I did pull some numbers.
And if that's later in your slide deck, I can just wait till you get to it.
Oh, I can go ahead and go over it. I just had them
Okay.
with me in case you wanted to know them. So combined public and status offenses from January 1 of this year until August of this year, we have already served 726 youth around the
Statewide,
state.
okay.
Yes, sir.
What's the public and status breakdown?
The public offenses were 686 cases.
Okay. So
And the status were 40. And of the ones that have been closed, I do actually have a percentage based on the 523 cases that have been closed this year. We have I don't have the exact number, but we have an 83% success rate and a 17% unsuccessful rate, which means those youth have been returned to secure detention.
Okay. And do you have, I mean, is your ATD program available in every county?
Yes, sir.
And do you find all courts utilize it?
Not every court utilizes them as much because they don't have as many youth in front of them. But when, I don't know the exact number of courts that use them. I know it's available in all 120 counties. And here recently, I've been here in the name of a couple counties that haven't in the past used ATDs, but they're using them now. So I think it just depends on their population.
If it's possible, I'd like to identify by map, by chart, spreadsheet, however you all can compile. I'd like to identify counties where you had eligible kids that didn't utilize the service, the program.
I'm not sure that we have that. I can check into it. I will check into it.
We'll see what we can come up with that. I'm not sure. I think what she's saying is if we know which ones, are not but we can look, I think, and break it out by county, those that have. Historically, I'll just tell you that this is very popular by most judges, but there are a few judges, and judges have their own mindsets on things, that have before said, no, if I want a kid to go to detention, by golly, I want them to go. So, you have a range of folks and how they want to use those programs.
I would love it if you all could provide data that shows us which counties those judges are working in, so that you don't have to out them. The numbers can out them. I want to know.
We can look to see what we can get, certainly.
Thank you.
Yes, I can try to get that. I know we keep track of the youth that are in the program, but we haven't kept data specific to that I know of. But I can check with
Well, and if you all need to work with AOC, or if you need to work with another agency to try to hone in on that, that'd be helpful for us to know.
Okay.
Senator, what
Yeah,
time
Secretary.
frame would you, when they take a look at this, just the last year or something like
Sure.
that? Would that?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Calendar 22.
Okay.
I'll let you decide that. Something that's useful.
The one other thing I'll just say was, because I was around when we first started these in my first stint, and it was really an interesting thing, because when it first came up, it was kind of like, well, I don't think I want to do that. It's like detention and that was it. But once we got them out there and started using them, they did. They saw the value of it. It became extremely popular with most of the judges. And as you were saying, especially in Jefferson and some of the others, they really, and honestly, the home incarceration is the most used and most popular, but for a lot of the kids, the ability to get them out of the home for a period of time is useful. I mean, we do have some kids that they're not going home because they have no home to go back to, or maybe they were DCBS youth, they were in a foster home, the foster home said, no, they got arrested,
Right.
I don't want them back. And so you hate to punish a child welfare kid by placing him in detention because he doesn't have a family. So there's many different, and so they started seeing the value of this. And I do think it's mostly very popular with most of the judges. But your question is very interesting, and I'd like to see that too. So
I see it as sort of a lot of us in the criminal justice space have talked about the sequential intercept model and thinking about intervening at different stages of the proceeding. And if Senate Bill 200 is aimed at getting diversion before there's a court process, I like the idea of there still being another safety valve to stop short of, well, before you send them to detention, here's another opportunity to intervene and do something. Be curious to know where it's being utilized and where it's not being utilized.
Okay.
Any other questions before I let Ms. Figg continue? All right, please.
Okay. As far as case management, like I said earlier, we contract with Methodist Home and NECO to provide in-home services for the youth, and those are the youth that are on home incarceration. So those managers, and if we have a youth in foster care or a private child care facility, those staff are the first line of contact for our kids because they are working daily with the youth. However, the DACs are on call 24/7 to take calls for any problem with their youth, any concern, if there's an injury or an illness that the youth needs to go. We've had some on home incarceration. The mom will call and say, he's sick, I think he has strep throat, we're going to the emergency room. Okay, well, please take your child to the emergency room, and those are things that we can work around. but they are on call to provide the case management if necessary. They can do home and school visits. I can't even count the number of times that I've done a home visit or a school visit in the middle of the day because the kid didn't go to school, and I'm showing up at the house saying, hey, why aren't you in school? You know, and it could be something, oh, we're sick, they didn't call in. A lot of our job is educating the family also in a lot of different ways because the parents struggle sometimes with those youth. They can communicate with the youth and the family via phone call. Sometimes they do FaceTime. I know when COVID was going on, we did a lot of FaceTiming with the kids and a lot of, you know, sitting across the street, waving at the kid at their house, talking to them. They're encouraged to assist in making any community referrals. We've had some families who needed help with food, and so the DAC has met with them and worked with them to get food stamps, or, you know, they need a Medicaid card. We work with them to get that. A lot of times we're sitting with them on the phone, navigating how to get their child into a counseling center because they don't know the answers and they get frustrated and then they just don't communicate with them. So those are a lot of the things that we do. We've helped families get the free phones. We've helped them get fans and air conditioning and those kinds of things. Written the people that are over the housing department. That's the word I was thinking of. Written them because they're living in deplorable conditions, which they've reported to their landlord. So they do a lot of assisting the families, working with the families, while also making sure the youth is held accountable at that time. And so to determine the appropriate placement, just to preface that, the judge is the one who makes the actual decision. We can recommend that the youth go somewhere, but the judge is the ultimate deciding factor. We do have a tool that we use that helps us place based on the youth's current charge, past 12-month history, aggravating factors, mitigating factors. We go over that, and that helps to recommend a level of placement. But the judge is the one who determines the actual placement of the youth. They're based on different levels. Of course, home incarceration is the lowest level, but we have youth on all different levels in every facility or program based on the fact that some youth just don't have places to go. And we also conduct a human trafficking screen on youth going into our programs, and we have had a couple who we have had to turn into DCBS. Not a huge amount that I can think of, but human trafficking screen is conducted on each youth before we put them in the placement, you know, and we don't want to send them to somebody or somewhere to live with that kind of trauma. So we make referrals if that is an issue.
Is the tool something, the placement tool, something that DJJ developed, or that you've bought license from some other place?
We developed it.
Okay.
Yes.
Has it been validated to any population?
It's not an assessment.
Oh, okay. So it's just a...
Right.
Gotcha.
It's not an assessment.
One question.
Okay, I'll add you to the list here. Before I turn to Steve Gold, is there, did you say how many coordinators you've got in the state?
We have currently 13.
Okay.
And we are in the process of hiring. We've had a few that have retired, and we're adding more staff to the Louisville area. So we should have 17 and DAC coordinators and 3 supervisors over those positions.
Are each of their territories roughly the same population-wise, I guess, then, or?
It's based on the detention center catchment area.
Okay.
So that's how we base. And so in the Bowling Green area, we have 2 DACs covering some counties, and then we have one in the middle that covers a few counties and feeds into McCracken also. So then in McCracken, we've got 2 workers who cover that whole area, and they all kind of bleed into each other.
Gotcha.
But yes, they're based on a catchment area.
Steve Gold.
I'd like to thank you, first of all. Our relationship with DAX from our court, from Henderson County standpoint, has been very positive. And the feedback that I hear from other prosecutors is, while there are always frustrations within any system, the DAX are always among the most popular of anybody involved in the juvenile justice system, because they are constantly working and they're constantly available. And I've been surprised at, how they've got to get up, deal with things in the middle of the night and everything. And they do a great job at that. So
Thank you.
I want to thank them for that. Now, you talked about the 83% success rate,
Yes.
17% failure rate, based on whether or not a youth was further detained,
Yes.
not necessarily whether they get another charge or something like that. And I know there's a little distinction there, and maybe not a huge difference. But my question is, and I'm certainly not pro over incarceration of juveniles. Senator Westerfield and I have been working on this for a long time together. However, the one thing we do know is generally when they're in detention, that reoffense rate is zero. So with regard to victims of those 17%, are there efforts ongoing to further refine that tool that you've got to make sure that we can keep that 17% down just as low as possible?
We are continuing. We review our forms. We review everything that we have on a pretty normal, regular basis. How long ago did we do that tool? It's not been that long, just a few years.
Yeah.
We redid the tool because the original tool was being overridden a lot. And so we created this one, and it's not overridden as much, and it's a little more constant, or not constant. I'm sorry, my words are escaping me right now. But it's more consistent than the other one, and we're not having as many overrides. I would love to have 100% success rate, but I will say that in the past 2 years, it's gone from 80 to 83. So we are moving up, and I think that as we get more DAC workers and really hone in on working one-on-one with the youth, I think we're going to see, hopefully, an improvement even in the 83%.
Thank you.
Most of those are unsuccessful. They are in detention because they have committed the new offense.
Right.
So.
Thank you for that. I just want to make sure there was continuous refinement going on that
Yes,
to try
sir.
to keep that as low as possible.
Yes, sir.
Anything further, Steve? Okay. Representative Bratcher.
Quickly, just where does the CDW come into this DAC and judge recommendation and placement, and then where's the CDW insert?
If the court designated worker is called out by a police officer and the child's in custody, then the court designated worker will after they've talked with the youth and they know the charges, they will call the detention alternative coordinator to see if we have anything available, and then they notify the judge and say, this is the youth, this is the charge, these are the release options we have. So then that leaves it up to the judge. Do they want this youth to go to home incarceration, or do they want this the youth to go to a private child care facility or detention? So we let them know, the DACs let the CDW know what is available in the counties, and then the DAC takes over that case after the referral is made. Any communication goes to the DAC after that.
Is a lot of this times this is over the phone?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Most of the times this is over the phone. The DACs can work up to 17 counties, and the CDW is there with the kid, and they call us, and we talk about it, and then help them make the decision.
Thank you.
And Miss Tina Robbins.
Hey, Margot. Tina with Behavioral Health.
I could have sworn there was a hyphen here where Matt wrote it down, but clearly there's not, and I'm just an idiot.
That's okay.
Please go ahead.
Good to see you, Margot.
Good to see you.
So you mentioned screening for human trafficking, and you've mentioned counseling a couple of times. Is there any behavioral health screening that occurs by the DACs, or
The DAC
how does
does,
that determine?
yeah, the DAC does not complete the behavioral health. They're not qualified mental health professionals.
Even to screen, though?
We have been in talks about training them to screen for some things. If they've seen the court designated worker, then they have that
Right,
screen.
right.
If they have things that are concerning, then we can have mobile assessments done on them.
Okay.
So if we can either do that before we put them in the placement, or if they're in the placement and something occurs, then we have places, the Ridge, the Brook, Our Lady of Peace, Sun Hospital. There's Cumberland Hall. I think all of them in Rivendell do the mobile assessments, so that the youth can still get the assessment, and then if they need more, then if they need hospitalization after that assessment, then we work with the court to make sure they get transported where they need to be so that they can get that treatment.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Robbins. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, just a question on that. Do you know how many of the youth have a mental health diagnosis, or do you all look at that?
I do not have
Okay.
that number.
Okay.
I'm
Thanks.
sorry.
Anybody else? Okay. I think you were on your last slide. Do you have
I
anything else you want to
was.
add?
No, sir. Thank you all very much for allowing me to come talk about the program.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We've got our next folks here by Zoom, and I'll talk about them in a second. But Commissioner, I was going to ask if we can have someone from the community supervision part of the agency talk about their services and what they do, either next month or the month after. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So a couple of months ago, I had an opportunity to be in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at an NCSL meeting, and it was structured differently than other NCSL meetings, and they had a lot of young adults there with lived experience that were talking about their time in the systems that they experienced, and then some of the advocacy work that they've done as young adults now to bring reforms to juvenile justice systems where they are. And there was a group of young men from Kansas that I got to talk to a bit and hear from quite a bit at that presentation during that day and a half or so in Santa Fe. And I invited them to come and speak with us this morning, or this afternoon, just barely. And so I want to welcome Desmond Brian White, the program manager for Detention Innovation in Progeny, Kansas. And I don't see them on our screens right here, but they are in the Zoom on the... If you can swap our screens there. Desmond, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. There you are. Good to see you again.
Hello. How's everybody doing?
Doing well. We had you. We can hear you. We had you on our picture here. Give us just a second. Yeah, let's see if it's gonna. If you'll say something, Desmond, or we'll see if it switches over to you while you're talking.
Yes, I'm here. Mic check.
All right, it's working, Desmond. I appreciate you being with us to talk to us, and I wanted to welcome you and tell you you've got the floor. So you've got a group of both executive branch and citizens that are appointed to this in different positions and roles to represent a lot of different stakeholder groups that are involved in the juvenile justice system, and a handful of legislators, myself included. And the Juvenile Justice Oversight Council here in Kentucky has been around for just shy of a decade, created with a bill sponsored or filed back in and passed back in 2014 to look at the implementation of juvenile justice reform that was passed in 2014, but also to examine and talk about further reforms that might be necessary for a juvenile justice system. So with that, I welcome you to our council meeting and give the floor to you. Desmond, go ahead.
No, thank you for having me, and I want to apologize. I had some of my youth leaders on the call, but between phone dying and other situations. Hopped off. Okay, here go Tyler. But I will introduce Progeny, the youth adult partnership focused on reimagining the juvenile justice system and community-based alternatives. It is a program of destination innovation, which the youth empowerment organization aligning boldly resilient young people with the tools and the mindset to move courageously with purpose and discipline to activate underserved communities. Our vision is to transform the juvenile justice system in Kansas by closing the last remaining youth prisons and shifting power back to the communities and the most impacted by these systems through investing in these programs and build a healthier Kansas and hopefully a better nation as well. At Progeny, we see problems and have passion, continue to disrupt the pipelines of incarceration that plague our communities, such as underinvestments. Kansas have been creating investments in community-based alternatives for youth and the juvenile justice system. However, we keep coming up short in really supporting our youth. Just Senate Bill 367, which was passed in 2016, which was intended to reduce youth incarceration and reinvest in community-based alternatives. After several years of funding, we just find that we've come up short. And the youth most impacted have not played a role in determining how Kansas will reinvest that money. So that's a system that we hope to share with partners and everybody from across the nation. We'll have the foster care system, homelessness, and like I said, youth incarceration and closing down the last youth prison in Kansas. Along some of our work that we've been doing, we've testified for eliminating fines and fees in Kansas for our Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee. And the work that we do is really hands-on and being able to take system-impacted young people and give them the tools and the mentorship and the resources in order to create change and reduce recidivism. Right now, we have 4 youth leaders on that we have stipends, so they get a monthly check in order to help with gas, help with a phone bill, help with maybe food, whatever it may be. But it helps them know that somebody's investing in them, and it helps them to be able to stay on track and believe that future is the best investment that yields the best return. So just being able to create safe spaces for our youth and continue to nurture their gifts, no matter what their past may be, especially those who have lived experience. I'm not sure if I can share a screen. I'll try, and I want to be able to share some of the stories from our youth leaders before we get the personal testimonies from those on the call. I'm going to try to share screen.
I just asked our staff to make you a co-host so you'd be able to do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Should be good to go now.
Okay, thank you. Is this visible?
Yes, sir. I mean, it's a black screen so far, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to push play. I'm sorry. One of these buttons. Technical difficulties, I'm sorry.
Trying to shake these demons up off of me. If you don't change, you stay the same. Day by day, nothing changes, yet we wake up and everything's changed.
I got into the system when I was 13, going on 14 years old. I was a kid, just hungry. I ended up stealing from the store. I've been in the system ever since.
Children should not be criminalized. We all make mistakes in life. Rich, poor, no matter the background, we all make mistakes in life.
My name is Tyler Williams.
Nakaya Gatson.
Elijah Metcalf. Dante Bristow.
Kristen Nicole Powell.
Desmond Bryant.
And I entered the juvenile justice system at the age of 13.
I think I was like 13. Yeah, I was 13. The first time I entered into the juvenile justice system was because I was trafficked and I was placed into the juvenile detention facility because of my victimization.
I got experiences from when I was a baby till now.
I recall a time that humbles me. I was trapped, no vision at all. The only thing that separated me from freedom was them laws and them walls.
I ended up going to jail at 13. While spending time in the prison, I actually lost my mom and my dad. I did not know at the time the severity of what I was actually facing.
You can be 13-year-olds and not get out of jail until you're 21, or go in when you're 15 and be held in the system until you're 24.
I began paying fines and fees from the moment you get into the system. From the time court, lawyer fees, all probation fees, those are all fines and fees.
They would take half of your income for any of your outstanding court costs.
They would take everything that my family members had to send in. So it was coming from both ends. Like before I even got my check, money was being taken out, and then when I got my check, I had to make a payment. So it's not fair.
I went to jail because I couldn't pay for my ankle monitor, and then they let me back out again on my ankle monitor that I couldn't pay for.
Having to pay fines and fees, having to deal with that is really like the hardest thing, you know. Still going day by day trying to figure out if we're gonna have enough food for next week, clothes for school.
We don't think about the trauma that we're causing these children by cycling them in and out of prisons and detention centers and jails and stacking on fees on top of fees because they cannot afford to pay the first fee.
There was no rehabilitation for kids like me who had nobody, kids like me who talk differently than other people, kids like me who got in trouble more than an average kid.
For you to be able to lock me up because I can't pay for it is messed up. I'm only a kid. I can't get a job.
We're putting fines and fees on kids and expecting them to act like adults.
A young child whose brain is still developing, who's still fumbling and stumbling trying to get through life, we're holding them accountable for growing up. And we're charging them for them when they make a mistake.
The mental health, you feel me, like it deteriorates over time, especially when it's like more and more and more and more being put on you.
For a 13-year-old kid to go through that, I mean, I'm still healing from it today.
So when we have politicians and leaders talking about what's wrong with these children, it's us. It's the policies you create. It's the systems that you create that keeps kids cycling in and out of prison.
As I look in the crowd, I can see the pain in your eyes. But I just want to leave this one last message to all my youth out there. Rise, rise, please rise.
I want to make a change, and I'm asking for help. Let's change this.
The system already messes up people's lives enough. Like there's enough trauma, there's enough lack of humanity already going on. I don't want to cry. You're being confined all day. So what is life? How do you heal with being in a room all day? How do you heal whenever everything is being taken away from you but a rubber pencil and a piece of paper? How do you heal from all of that and not be mad?
Stand up with me and let's get these fines and fees taken care of. The youth should not be punished for not being able to pay for fines and fees.
So that was a project that we worked with one of our partners from the Debt Free Justice Coalition, which is a coalition of organizations from across the country and in Kansas. And we work around advocacy and giving youth a voice in order to be the voice for youth across the country in our communities. We focus on policy development, leadership development, and also mentorship and giving different avenues and different possibilities and showing youth there is life outside of the system and showing them how systems work and also what it will look like for yourself to be a part of that system in a healthy and authentic way. I want to give one of the original youth leaders with Progeny, Tyler Williams, an opportunity to tell his story and how Progeny has benefited his life. Are you there, Tyler?
We don't see him or hear him.
Okay, he was having some technical difficulties earlier, so if he's not able to give him a minute. Oh, yep, technical difficulties. So some of the work that we're doing now, we just did a probation experience focus groups with families and youth here in Kansas, and that was hosted by the funded by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and we were able to get stories and feedback from youth under 18 who have experienced probation. So the goal in that is to create a system that is beneficial, even at a young age. If you have to go through probation, being able to give resources that will help youth throughout time in probation. And it looks like Tyler is up and running, so I'll give him the floor.
Hello, my name is Tyler Williams. I'm one of the original youth leaders here with Progeny. And, just to talk about a little bit of my personal experience with the organization, I was one of the original youth leaders. I got in with a couple of the other youth who were first getting out of the system. We all had firsthand experience and we all wanted to see change in our community. We ended up getting some investment from one of the local nonprofits and got our feet on the ground. And, we started by first making sure we knew what was actually going on in the community, learning personal development, leadership development, the ins and outs of the system, the pathway to get bills made, and began creating reports with community members, those who were directly and indirectly impacted by our juvenile justice system. And now we are working on multiple campaign fronts, one of those being the Debt Free Justice campaign, where we have written our first bill. So I feel like we have a lot of good investment, a lot of great connecting points for the youth, and a great space, to show that, yes, you may have entered the system, but it's not the end all be all. One of our big sayings here is your story is not your crutch, it's your sword. So make the difference that you want to see in this world. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Desmond, or Tyler, either one, I'm curious, what do you think is the most important thing for policymakers in Kentucky to do for the juveniles that are in their system? And what do you think is the most important thing we can do to prevent juveniles from entering the system?
From my perspective, from what I've seen and experienced as well, I believe that lack of resources are something that every community possesses, and not the lack of resources, the accessibility to those resources. I know at least for in my community, we don't really even have a community resource center to where youth could go and just have a safe space outside of, our DI home, but just to be able to go somewhere and be safe and have their resources, whether it be therapy, whether it be somebody to talk to. I believe that all youth should have that one person in their corner that is there for them. And what I'm hearing over the past August from our focus group is a lot of youth don't have that individual. And I think that as leaders, we have to, create those safe spaces for youth to be able to thrive and hopefully be preventative from them ever entering the system. But with Progeny, we use art a lot, and I believe that a lot of systems took away art out of the schools and out of made it less accessible. And I feel like art is an avenue for youth to be authentic in their story and put their energy into somewhere if they're not, gifted athletically or, gifted intellectually. An art form is a way that they can express themselves. And a lot of youth are angry and, as they should be in this crazy world, and they just don't have an outlet. So it's creating more accessibility to resources that can benefit youth. Tyler, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I do not have anything else to add.
Would that have helped both of you?
Most definitely. I believe that Progeny, everything that we do, not everything, but most things that we do, we try to invest in the youth, and that just kind of shows them that they're important, and the things that they do, people are watching and respect, and especially being impacted, can be embarrassing. That can be, demoralizing, and if you're in the system, if you're incarcerated, it's oftentimes dehumanizing. So how do you heal? How do you resurrect a life that's institutionalized? And I believe that's only through direct connections and direct connections to resources and mentorship and therapy to get over those hurdles or even prevent them before they start. And starts at an early age. So we're talking, middle school age. How do we prevent and change a mindset at an early age? Such as we have a program called Word to Life, where we take poetry and music and we have it as an outlet for mental health. So we go into the schools and we have, cipher sessions and writing sessions to be able to give youth an outlet to speak about their home life, which coming from them, they never had the opportunity. Sometimes if a youth comes to school and he's sleepy, nobody's asking him why. They say, get your head up or leave my class. But what if he had to stay up all night to protect his mother from an abusive partner? What if he had to stay up to watch his siblings because his mom had to work a third shift job? So just being more understanding and intuitive to, the life outside of that individual's life, and able to incorporate arts into that is a authentic way to do so, from my perspective.
And I'm going to put you on the spot with another deep policy question. What would you recommend, or what ideas do you have on better engaging parents and families in the lives of the children that are coming into the system?
Mm-hmm. I would say the investment part. It's making sure that a family is a family before they are reinserted. If a youth in a family, if there are any kind of discrepancies, making sure that family is whole, whatever that looks like, before that youth is forced to go back to that home. And they may need to be in that space, but if the problem was lack of funds because the youth has fines and fees to pay now, but family can't afford it, and the youth for sure can't afford it because they can't work. How do we heal that situation when it's just a matter of having lack of financials? Or I think the solution to that would just be creating programs for the family specifically in order to, help them along the process and working through the system. Here in Kansas, they tack on fines and fees along every process of the system while they're going through court, and that's 9 different fines and fees potentially, and just having somebody there that can advocate for the families, advocate for the youth as well. And I don't know, I think that maybe financials or an investment in that would or could be a solution.
Any questions for any of the council members? Yeah, Representative Herron.
Thank you for your presentation and the work that you're doing out in Kansas. I did have a question about, at one point in time, you mentioned about giving young people stipends for their engagement. I know that there's a couple of subcommittee groups here that have attempted to do that, and I know that there has been some pushback from folks of saying that those young people do not deserve stipends or should not be getting those stipends. Can you talk more about your process with getting you stipends who are justice involved, and the importance of not only having them engaged, but ensuring that they are compensated for their presence?
Probably more of like one of the ED question, but I'll try to answer it. From our perspective, we have 4 youth leaders on our youth leader intern, in which we contract them out for a year position. So we just hired our interns that will work with us through 2023 and 2024. Progeny is the only program of its kind in Kansas and probably in the Midwest area. We are nationally funded. So I think that separates us from a lot of organizations around us, because we don't really have to fight for the state money. And I think that's when we talk of lack of resources, but also leaning into your network as well and finding a way, because youth most definitely do deserve that, because it's just that the energy of telling them that they don't deserve something is what propels them to go find it, because we have to eat, we have to pay a bill, and our youth are forced to grow up at an earlier age, taking adult responsibilities at the age of 13. So what if there was a program that would allow them to not only face their demons that they may have experienced at a young age, but also allows them a way to receive that stipend, or any kind of resources, shall I say, in order to just create a better lifestyle. And I feel that most definitely youth affected by the system, they deserve it, respect and justice. And I feel like investing in our youth is a way to change a mindset, because once a youth knows that they're loved and invested in, that will hold them accountable, that will hold them responsible in order to start to create change in their own life. And it's not until they start to see those investments that the thought process can change. And waiting until a youth is 18 and goes to college and trying to pour into them, then I just feel like that's too late. We have to start earlier and really change the culture and the mindset of our youth at an earlier age. And this is just one way that we can do so. And again, our youth is the best investment that we can make that yields the best return. And I don't know, we have to be creative in how we do so. And I feel like the money's there. We live in an abundant world, and just being able to think outside the box and bring innovative and creative programming into these spaces in order to support our youth, because they are the next generation. They are the next set of leaders, and we can't hold youth back just because they made a mistake when they were 13 or 15. We have to be able to uplift them and show them a different way. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Seeing none. Desmond, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the work you're doing in Kansas. And I'm happy to help you if I can be a resource for the legislators you talk to over there in our sister state, sister K state. Happy to help you all, but I'm thankful for the work you're doing. It was a pleasure to meet you a couple of months ago, and I appreciate you making time for us here at our council meeting today.
Most definitely. Thank you for having us. And if there's any way that we can be of any help or help at all, please reach out. We would love to come to Kentucky sometime and share with any youth there that's willing to listen. So thank you again for having us, and have a great day.
I appreciate it. And give our thanks to Tyler as well, and the rest of the guys. Okay. That concludes the business on the agenda today. I do want to remind you that our next meeting is September 15th. Commissioner, is that enough time for your community folks to... Okay. Okay. Hold on just a second. Oh, yeah, Representative Herron.
Yeah, I just have a question. I don't know if that's for you or for DJJ.
Fire
Can we
away.
get an update on the progress of the facility in Jefferson County, where the timeline is of what's happening?
I see the secretary moving to the
Yeah,
mic.
I've had a lot of folks asking me that question, and I have no idea. So,
Well, and what I tell you may be unsatisfying in some ways, but we are in the design phase now. And as you know, once these projects go into construction, this is largely in the arena of the finance cabinet and DECA and all of that. But I know that they're working on the design for the renovations of the building, which, as you know, is going to be a very extensive project. You know, this is not just coming in with some paint and floor coverings. This is going to be a very extensive project. I cannot give you a timeline at this point. I think once the design is completed and the bid packages are ready to go out, the design professionals at that point might have some estimates of the time. But, you know, this is going to be, I wouldn't want anybody to think we're going to be in that building in 6 months or 10 months, you know, because this is a very extensive construction project.
Do you have designs, floor plans, things that you can show us? Obviously, we're not going to try to micromanage the design of a building, but out of curiosity.
We do not at this point, Senator. That's being worked on now,
Okay.
as I understand it. And again, I don't want to mislead you because this is largely in the finance cabinet arena, but I know that the juvenile justice people, I think Larry Chandler is probably our representative involved in that process, and I know they're having meetings, you know, almost every day trying to figure out what the footprint needs to be, what this needs to look like when it's completed. But I think until the design is completed and they're at least ready to go out to start bidding the construction, it's just, I think it's impossible to know what the timeline will be because they're still trying to figure out, you know, it's an old building, and so they're trying to figure out just how
does
much.
the cabinet have a goal for when you want to get it out for bid?
Again, I don't want to presume on finances arena, but I think that won't be, you know, we're probably, I can't give you a time, but I think it's pretty soon. I
Okay.
think the design phase is well underway.
Okay.
And, you know, the first thing that had to happen is RFP had to go out to hire the design firm, and all the procurement stuff takes time, as you all know. So I think that is progressing in good order, and I would hope within, you know, the next few months we'll have a lot more information about that. But this, you know, I get a lot of questions about this too, and I've heard, you know, some folks. I think that in some circles there's maybe a misunderstanding about the scope of this project, because I've had some people say, well, we'll be in there by next summer, right? And I'm no construction person, but I doubt that will be the case, because this is there's just so much work needed on that building. I think there are probably going to be some, you know, sort of fundamental systems that are going to have to be addressed. There's going to have to be a lot of new technology put in the building. So this is not going to be a turnaround of a few months. That's the best I can do now.
Chairman, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say for the record, this is a very frustrating, not necessarily on the administration, but I think that this past year when we were talking about repurposing or reopening the facility, one of the things that I know that myself and other people talked about was, is this facility the best facility to do this? And hearing what you're saying, I'm still not sure that it is. And so I still have questions about how much it is going to cost to get that building up and running. And did it make sense for us to do this at a different location? I think that what we're seeing in Jefferson County and what the needs are in the county, this is just very unacceptable. And I think that we as a legislative body has to take responsibility for that. And so I just want to speak that for the record, because it's just very frustrating. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything they want to share or comment? Want to give a special welcome here at the end of the first meeting for our new AOC director, Katie Comstock. And I'm told she's got a speech she'd like to present to the. Did y'all see that look I just got? No, it's not. Won't be the last. From Katie. All right. Seeing nothing else, we've
Chairman.
got
Just on behalf of prosecutors, we had our prosecutors conference this past week.
Yes, sir.
Ended earlier today. I do want to share with the Oversight Council that the fair team attendance issue was a point of emphasis at the County Attorneys Association meeting, and the leadership of our organization was very clear to everyone about that. So that word has gotten out there. I just wanted to share.
That's great. That's great. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I believe, actually, I have a meeting with Scott West here in just a minute. I'm going to ask to make sure DPA has gotten that same message. I appreciate that. All right. Seeing no other business to come before the committee, we are adjourned. Thank you. See you next month on the 15th at 2 in the afternoon, 2 o'clock. Thank you.